Hello, Pharmacist Tucker here at MD Custom RX. I wanted to talk about childhood ADHD and a product that recently came out that I've actually been recommending in a different form for quite some time, but now they made it liquid, so it makes it a lot easier for our pediatric patients to use. The product itself is called Cerevive Junior. We're going to jump into some of the individual ingredients and how they work, and I'm going to talk about why stimulants might not be my favorite option to jump to without trying a few other things beforehand. So Cerevive Junior contains a number of ingredients that help support neurotransmitter activity. So when we talk about the brain, we're looking at dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. In ADHD, serotonin and dopamine tend to be our more important ones. So the first ingredient in it is called L-theanine. It's an amino acid that's actually found abundantly in green tea. We've been recommending it in a lot of products that we have here that assist with sleep or for psychological stress. It's in a lot of those different preps. One of the reasons that I really like this one is it helps increase alpha wave brain activity, which is a brain wave associated with more relaxation, ability to provide appropriate focus on certain activities, avoiding stressful, obsessive, compulsive thoughts. And this L-theanine has actually been studied looking at sleep quality, specifically in adolescent patients, boys 8 to 12 with ADHD, and found both sleep duration and sleep quality were improved. So you can imagine if our patient has ADHD, is struggling at school, getting a good night's sleep is probably a really great first step in assisting with handling that focus issue, those behavior issues that could be an issue at school or outside of school even. So that's L-theanine. The other ingredient is in the B vitamin family. It's called inositol, also in a lot of other products that we recommend here. This one is more involved in making sure that neurotransmitters are being released from the first neuron into that synapse, which is the space between two neurons. That's where they release neurotransmitters, so they're able to speak to the next neuron in line. Inositol, if we're very low on that, or even slightly deficient, we can have more symptoms of kind of like panic, obsessive compulsive, worrying, restlessness, which again are kind of hallmarks of ADHD. The next ingredient is 5-HTP, which is a precursor of serotonin. Serotonin's a neurotransmitter involved in a lot of mood regulation, maintaining adequate sleep. Indirectly, it's going to have a big impact on oxytocin, which is a neurohormone that is involved in building trust, relationships, bonding. So you can imagine if we're having serotonin issues in a young child, they're secondarily not going to be getting that same oxytocin. Could be very concerning to be a young person having kind of a neurobiological deficit in the ability to build relationships, develop trust. So that's another one that I view as very important, especially if we're having signs that 5-HTP or serotonin might be deficient. The next ingredient is, forgive me, this is a tough one to pronounce, Mucuna pruriens, better known as velvet bean. It contains this precursor of dopamine called L-dopa, which the body can use to produce more of that neurotransmitter dopamine, which is very involved in the ADHD pathology, and it's actually what a lot of the stimulant medications work on. So they basically prevent, when dopamine enters that synaptic space, so the area between the two neurons, it prevents it from being reabsorbed into the preceding neurons, so it increases the duration of time it's there, which is an effective way to increase dopamine neurotransmission, but I do have some concerns about it, and we'll touch on that very briefly at the end of this video. So we've got those basic building blocks for L-dopa, for dopamine, 5-HTP for serotonin. We have our L-theanine, which is going to help support normal transmission of those neurotransmitters, as well as inositol, that B vitamin related compound that is involved in making sure that we're releasing our neurotransmitters from our presynaptic neuron through the synapse, that space between them, and allowing it to be viewed by the next neuron in line, so we can make sure that our signals are transducing appropriately. Which is very interesting, because that is one of the thinkings behind the origin of ADHD, how some patients can have it, some others do not. They're thinking that it is involved in the body's ability to actually release that hormone or the neurotransmitter from that presynaptic neuron. So I also view this as, instead of increasing that resonance time in the synapse, we're kind of trying to address, why is this occurring in the first place? Could it be body is producing neurotransmitters poorly? Could it be that we have a genetic predisposition to holding onto those neurotransmitters in that first neuron more? So this is one reason why I really like at least attempting this approach before jumping right to stimulants. Which is a good segue too. This isn't something that you have to pick a path where it's, okay, we're going to do Cerevive, or this is something I have for adults. Just regular Cerevive. For kids, Cerevive Junior, liquid dose. We can help you with dosing, kind of based on weight, but a little bit of gray area there, so feel free to talk to our pharmacist and we can assist you. Also worth noting that we have a test kit here. We actually did a seminar quite recently, earlier this year, that looked at how we can measure neurotransmitter levels. We have a kit that we can send out, or you can come and get it. All our pharmacists are very well phrased in understanding what it's looking at, what benefits we can derive from it, how it can guide either picking supplements that are going to assist in increasing those neurotransmitter levels. Sometimes we have to look at GI health, actually. A lot of our neurotransmitters are produced by the bacteria in our gut, so that's another area that we can work on things. So if we're any patients that having psychological symptoms that could be related to neurotransmitters, in addition, not psychological issues, like sometimes GI issues, it's from a serotonin imbalance. SSRIs or antidepressant class can actually mess with the body's ability to digest food effectively. So very good thing to look at. We'll be sure to include a link to that seminar right underneath this video. And then just going back to the actual ingredients of the Cerevive Junior. So we talked about kind of the main ingredients, but it also has a lot of micronutrients in there that are involved in making sure the brain is not overproducing glutamate. Glutamate is another neurotransmitter that is considered excitatory, basically activating in the body. I tend to view glutamate as the on signal, and then another neurotransmitter called GABA as the off signal. But these micronutrients, it's nothing too complicated. So magnesium, B6, niacin, zinc, if we're really deficient in any of those, could have some effect in the body's ability to basically keep those neurotransmitters working the way that they're designed. Especially in kids that might not be taking a multivitamin or something like that. It's not unusual for them to be short on magnesium or zinc, or if they have a genetic predisposition to poorly absorbing those, the standard American diet is not going to take care of them. So, all right, so to close, I want to get into a little bit of why I have concerns about stimulant medications, their long-term implications. And then it's actually going to dovetail really nicely into a video that we did quite recently, earlier this week, on methylene blue. My co-pharmacist Dane was talking about the mitochondria, damage to the mitochondria, ways that we can reduce some of that damage to the mitochondria, and then also why mitochondria are kind of involved in aging. So the mitochondria are the powerhouses of each cell. They basically are how, on a cellular level, we convert food into usable energy, or ATP. A lot of patients, or a lot of people, don't know that mitochondria actually has its own DNA. It's called mitochondrial DNA. We actually inherit it from our mother specifically. In fact, you would have the same mitochondrial DNA as anyone dating back thousands, tens of thousands of years that shares the same maternal line. Really interesting stuff. We all inherit it, basically error-free. But like all DNA, mitochondrial DNA can be damaged. And that's one of the thinking, is that continual damage is kind of what create someone's biological age. We can obviously measure age by years since birth, but you can certainly see some people look more youthful, have less diseases of chronic age, and one of the thinkings is a lot of that is being driven by this mitochondrial DNA damage. So you're probably wondering, how does this connect back to stimulants? So stimulants, again, work by basically increasing the amount of dopamine in that synaptic space between the first neuron and the second neuron, allowing them to communicate more strongly. But having that dopamine in there longer, the thinking is that that is driving a lot more production of reactive oxygen species, or ROS, which cause DNA damage. So how mitochondria work, they implicitly have to create some of these reactive oxygen species just to function. So they're in a hot spot as far as being exposed to potentially damaging environment on their DNA. And they also have less propensity to repair that DNA damage in comparison to other cells. They're missing a lot of the mechanisms that our body uses to go, oh, there's an error there, time to remove that, fix this, or tell the cell to actually just die because it's got too many errors in its transcription and it isn't going to replicate through mitosis and basically perpetuate that error further on down the cell line. So if we have these stimulant medications that are known to cause that mitochondrial damage, probably a good idea to explore other options in terms of maybe increasing our neurotransmitter activity, using something that is going to help make sure that my neurotransmitters are being released appropriately is a good idea. Again, this is something that can be used while a patient is on a stimulant medication. I really think there is added benefit to that. But if you are a parent or grandparent of a child who's having some grade issues or behavior issues in school, and they're talking, hey, maybe stimulants are the way to go, at least give us a ring and feel free to pick our brain on some alternative options that are at least worth trying for a few months before jumping to, in my opinion, kind of a more radical solution. Again, thank you very much for tuning in. Really passionate about looking into our mechanisms that we can assist patients from a research perspective, from a product perspective. So if you have any questions or concerns or anything else you want me to dig in deeper, maybe just with a quick comment on the YouTube, or I can always do more videos, feel free to let me know. Thank you all.